G'day folks, and welcome to Gormo Shed. Hope you're all keeping well. What we're looking at today is some easy roads, and these roads are very similar to these ones here that I'm going to show you that I did in my town of Great Chesterford. Now these really only are suitable for those people who are doing a pretty flat sort of townscape, and in reality that's probably quite a few of us, but you know, there are people that do roads on hilly townscapes and so on, so this may not be quite as good for that sort of situation, but it's definitely ideal if you're doing a pretty flat sort of townscape. So there's nothing much to it. It's just about having the right materials and knowing how to go about it and how to make the road look more realistic. So what we might do is now move out to the workshop and we'll have a bit of a look at how I do my roads. Okay folks, so what I'm using here is wet and dry paper. This is the paper that you would use to rub back paint if you're doing a repair on your car, to sand it smooth if you're doing undercoats and all that sort of thing, and it comes in various grades from smooth to rough or rough to smooth, whatever you like, and you would not be able to see the difference here on these three different grades of paper probably, except for a change in tone on that one. But this is the finest paper, and that's the 1200, that's the 800, and that's 180 I think. I'll turn them over and you can see that if we turn them up the right way. So that's a P1200, and this one is the 800, and this one is a 180. Now you can see it there, that's a 180. So what I'm sort of going with is, like, the 1200 is very, very fine, and I would sort of suggest maybe that's good for N scale. I'm going to use the 800, which is an in-between sort of grit. It's still nice and smooth, and I think that's ideal for 00HO. So that's the one we're going to use to make our road surface. I should point out too that I got this from Bunnings here in Australia, which is our large retail chain, hardware chain, and this stuff is $1.25 per sheet. It's probably around about A4 size, and if you look at it realistically, if you're going lengthwise, if you're doing straight roads, you've got 1, 2, probably 3 bits of road in there, depending on how wide you want the road or how narrow you want the road, and the shape of the road and all that sort of thing. But you know, if you're just talking straight bits of road, you've probably got 3 bits in there. Now, for the purposes of this demo, folks, I'm going to make this road 70mm wide, which is sort of a compromise, I suppose. So we'll make it 70mm wide, and that's roughly the width of the road on my bridge that you would have seen in the video just at the start here. So we'll cut a piece off, and then we're right. So just cut that off with a straight edge and a good sharp blade, and we've got our road surface. Now if you want a nice pristine piece of road that's just been laid and it's as flat as a billiard table, well, there you go, you're right to go already. But most roads aren't like that, so what we need to do now is distress this piece of wet and dry paper to put some wrinkles in it and really rough it up and change the tones in the surface so it's uneven. So I'll take my bit of wet and dry paper and I'll start running it over the edge of my bench to just sort of start to distress it a bit, and then I will start to work it in my fingers and rub it against itself and really start to rough it up, even crumple it a bit. It's pretty strong paper, and it'll take a bit of a hiding. So now it's looking a bit ordinary. So now I take some more wet and dry paper. This is a bit of 800, and run it over the surface as well, just to rough it up a bit. Got some marks on there, like that. Right, that's not too bad. Yeah, so that's how it's coming up. Now you think, my goodness, Gormo, that's not going to look like much of a road. But stay with me, folks. All will be revealed soon. We're going to use this bit of MDF here to glue it down. This will be our test bit here. So what we're going to do now, folks, is add some PVA to it. And my PVA bottle has decided to give up the ghost. The nozzle just broke off. But we'll put some PVA on there. And you think, crikey, Gormo, how much PVA you're putting on there? But just take a brush, spread it out, and you know, you'd be doing this sort of thing, laying your roads and everything. You can do it after you put your buildings down, but I would suggest, if you've got a plan, sort of work that out first and do your roads first. Even if you lay out a big flat sheet of this stuff, and then create your roads by going over the top of it with buildings and paving and that sort of thing, you can do that as well. But then you're using up a lot of wet and dry paper that's going to be covered up, you know. So this is probably the cheaper way to do it. Anyway, that's round in PVA now, and what we'll do is just put that brush down, turn it over, and lay it down. Flatten it out. Now you've got to watch this stuff, because I'll just get a rag. Yeah, you've got to watch this process, because I've found in the past, although it doesn't look like it on this particular piece, it wants to curl up on the edge. I've probably put a lot more PVA on this time, but generally it wants to curl up on the edges. Anyway, it looks like actually it's not happening this time. When you're doing a video and you say things, nothing works. Oh well. Now I've got some glue on the top of this as well, which has sort of put these extra marks and so on it. So what I'm doing is I'm just flattening it all down. Get it as flat as you can. And obviously we've got to wait for the glue to go off, but yeah, there we go. Now if it starts curling up on you, you need to sort of weight the edges down with something heavy, books, or you know, put some baking paper over the top, and then put some books on, or whatever, anything you've got, just to let it go off properly and stick down properly. So there we are. Now I've let this set for about an hour or so, but really ideally it'd be best to leave it overnight. And yeah, it's got some marks on it from where the glue was and all that sort of thing, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But what I might do is just give it another rub with the wet and dry paper as I did before, and we'll see how that comes up, and then we'll have a look at how we do some lines on this thing. Okay, I'll give it another rub just to get it the way I want it. And now that the paper is glued down, any of the creases, etc., that were put in it are showing up more now that I've given it a rub. So I'll bring the camera down close so you can have a look at that in a moment. I think that will do. Right, now you can see how it's looking even more distressed now that I've just given it that rub, and it's got all these marks and so on in it, which quite appeals to me. But yeah, I mean, if you'd like the old dead flat, just freshly laid, flat as a billiard table bitumen, well, don't do any distressing. Now to do my lines, I just use these watercolour pencils, but when I use them I don't use any water with the watercolour pencils. I just use the pencil straight out of the box.
Now I'm just going to do a couple of white centre lines, so I'll just I've marked the centres at each end there. Now we can do a straight line, and the thing with the watercolour pencil going onto this surface is that it's not absolutely brilliant non-see-through colour. I mean, you can build it up a bit if you want, and it comes up like that. It's not exactly perfect. However, I think it looks a bit more realistic and probably not as wide as what some people do. I'll turn that around to do another line on the other side. And I think the trap that some people fall into when they're doing lines is they make them too wide. I was talking about this the other night with my friend Gary, and so we can make some broken lines as well. Oops, we're a bit too close there. A bit too close. We'll do some broken lines as well. I mean, obviously you measure these out. I'm just sort of doing this to give you an idea of what it looks like. And this is fairly quick on a straight section. On a curved section, I've used like jam tin lids and whatever to give me some sort of a former to create the proper curve for the line. So now we'll try something else. Right, now I'm just going to do a rough sort of a crossing. So I'll work from the centre line, and I'll mark the crossing pieces at 5mm, and I'll leave a gap of 5mm in between them, and we'll see how it turns out. So we'll continue that on about there, another one there, another one there, and that's it. So now I'll move along a bit and do the same sort of thing again, same sort of spacing. And same over the other side here. Right, we've got our crossing lines, the ends marked out, so I'll just go along and do the joins, and I'll get back to you. Right, we've got our crossing outlines marked out, so we'll just start to colour them in. So, you know, this could take a while, and this is just part of the process. This is actually my first crossing that I've ever done, so I knew it would work because the lines actually work on the paper, so that's no problem. So we'll just colour them in. So I'll get on and do that, and we'll speed the whole sequence up now. So there we are. I mean, my colouring in's not real great there, but this is just done very quickly just to show you how you can do it. Now I guess we should put it into context and show it with a car or something down there. So I'll grab a car and we'll see how it looks with some close-up photography. Now, as I say, this is done quickly, so you can do a bit of a neater job on the lines than I've done here. But this is how it's coming up. And same applies to the crossing. I mean, I've done that very quickly, but you could take a bit more time and effort with that and sort of get a better result there. So that's how it's done, folks. And I've done one actually on my goods shed, which I'll show you, which is just a narrow access road, and that's on a bit of a slope, so you'll get a better idea of what else is possible. Yes, you can see this one. This road actually goes down to the goods shed, and I laid the wet and dry paper, and then brought the gravel sides up to it to sort of soften the edges. But it's had the same treatment. Obviously there's no lines on this one, but yeah, that's how it's done.
Well folks, that's all there is to it, so get out there and start laying some roads. I'll see you next time. Cheers, Gormo.